Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Now, if you've been here for a little bit, you're probably aware I'm a bit of a simp for the Uchihas, okay? I mean, I got it on my arm. I cosplayed as Itachi. I like their gig, alright? I think they're pretty cool when it comes to, like, dojutsus and, like, powers with the eyes. I always think that's really sick. So when I found out that King was coming out with a new Mangekyō Sharingan class mod, a little update, if you will, it's safe to say I was pretty excited. If you haven't seen it, I originally made my video on the class mod prior to this update, and to be honest, quite a bit of stuff has changed here, and I would highly recommend going through this even if you've seen that old one if you plan on using it, because while, yeah, they both have like their Mangekyō arts and those can be kind of similar, the way that it works and the way that it functions is pretty different in a lot of ways. That being said, I think it's a pretty good change, just like most of the changes he's made to class mods and just classes and things like that in general, as it's really just been simplified down to a point of being a lot more comfortable and being a lot easier to use. One of the biggest difficulties of the class mods was, one, they were way too strong for most campaigns, but that was kind of the fun in them. But really the other thing was that they were just pretty difficult to understand, and you needed a player specifically that was willing to dig into it a little bit. Because if you gave them this class mod and it was someone that really wasn't big into not necessarily min-maxing, but rather just really getting into the nitty-gritty of rules, they weren't going to use it to a very good efficiency. Not only that, but they probably wouldn't even enjoy using it, as it just adds more resources and more things that the player has to worry about. So with that being said, if you've been here before, I usually like to start with things like this, and this is the GM guidance for the Mangekyō Sharingan. If you want to read through this, feel free, but again, it's really just the idea of, one, understand that these class mods are very, very powerful. Naruto 5e is already a system that really amplifies the numbers you can do, so as a GM, if you're not ready for even stronger players, do not give them these class mods. Two, understand these class mods are really good story elements. Just like in Naruto, the ideal way to use these is to use them to alter the story in some way. Now, three, one thing that I like to add personally is don't be afraid to alter this. Don't give this to a player and think you have to stick exactly to whatever it says, rule by rule, line by line. You don't get to do anything else. Because frankly, a cool way you can handle these is maybe giving someone a Mangekyō Sharingan and they're not quite of the minimum level requirement, so it'll probably be a little strong. Alter it a little bit. Maybe let them choose one less Mangekyō art. Maybe give them a little less leeway when it comes to using it. And one of the biggest things I'd recommend, which I'll get a little more into later, is add your own flair to it. Maybe the punishment that you get for using it isn't quite what you're looking for, or maybe it takes too long for that to activate, or maybe it's too short and you want your players to be able to use it for longer amounts of time without being punished. Always, always, always feel free to alter these to better fit your campaign, your setting, your story, whatever the case may be. Okay, now just like most of my class mod videos, we're gonna go over this in a very short and sweet kind of overlay of the thing. It'll still probably be a longer video, but I'm gonna try to make it as fast as possible. So getting into gaining and leveling up the Mangekyō Sharingan, when it comes to gaining it, obviously read through, go through it, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, one, not the player's choice to gain the Mangekyō Sharingan. Two, make it some kind of story plot that is important. You don't want your Uchiha character person to just automatically get a Mangekyō because they want it, because it's really strong. And especially if they're building into it and they've kind of been intending to unlock this Mangekyō Sharingan, it's a little gross. So, make sure to only have it to be handed out in certain circumstances. And then as for leveling it up, it's really going to depend somewhat on the player and kind of what type of character they're running. There's the training and effort route, which is basically, hey, they're the good guy, they maybe unlocked it by the death of a loved one or something like that, and they want to train and work hard to get it, which is fine, but it's going to cost them some downtime and stuff like that to get it. Now when it comes to the other end of the spectrum, there's the hatred and malice way of getting it. And in this one, it's a dangerous route to go, okay? In any D&D character, if you don't have a lot of experience, evil PCs can be a very dangerous line to walk. Sometimes even if your character's not technically evil, but they have evil tendencies, it can still cause some problems and become not very fun for everyone else. So if you have a PC that's leaning into the evil, sometimes even chaotic route of a character, giving them something like a Mangekyō where they can level it up, abusing that, is a dangerous game to play, so just be careful about that. Now, one addition they added to the Mangekyō this go around, which I really, really love, and I think was a perfect change, is the light and darkness in the Mangekyō Sharingan. Long story short, your light is going to be how many times and how long you can use it until you start to go blind. If you've seen the show, Itachi overuses his Mangekyō Sharingan for too long and eventually goes blind because of it. He also had his own cancer stuff, but topic for another video. So as you start to use your Mangekyō, there is going to be small uses of it that you can do without being a problem, but as soon as you start to overuse it, you start to lean more and more towards that losing your vision. And if you run out of light, that's it. It's gone. The Mangekyō Sharingan does not come back, so be careful, and you are perma-blinded, straight up. Now, what I really like as well is once you've unlocked the EMS, which we'll talk about later, you then go into Darkness, and Darkness is basically the other end of if you overuse the EMS, it starts to just take you over, and the Uchiha Curse of the Hatred starts to get to you, and you kind of start to lose control of your character. And, you know, we'll get more in depth once we kind of explain how the light and darkness will really be added to your character and gained and things like that. So after all of that exposition and explanation, what does the Mangekyō Sharingan actually do? Well, for one, when it comes to activating it, it's a bonus action just like the Sharingan, and you don't have to already have had the Sharingan activated. You can go straight into the Mangekyō Sharingan, which is nice, doesn't cost you anything extra, that is, I should say. But when activating it is going to cost you 2 hit dice, and that's a permanent reduction of your maximum hit dice until you do a full rest. So I guess not technically permanent, but your hit die maximum does go down until you do a full rest. So more than likely until you finish whatever mission, whatever escapade you're on, whatever you might be doing, if you were the one with the Mangekyō Sharingan, once you lose these 2 hit dice, they don't come back simply off of a long rest. Now, some other things it gives you is, you know, you get your usual Sharingan stuff, you get your usual Sharingan abilities. It gives you 3 more additional uses plus whatever your level is in the actual class mod of different Sharingan abilities, which is always nice. And then as you get a little stronger, you get more and more bonuses, such as AC bonuses, such as, you know, things like helping your genjutsus, helping your deck saves, things of that nature. And then it can last longer and all that kind of stuff. And also the Mangekyō Light, which I've already given a base explanation, but since we're here at the main section, with the Light, basically what happens is you'll get a few uses of your Mangekyō arts, and once you have gotten rid of all of those uses, so you can see up here your Mangekyō art charges. Once you've used all of those charges, you can then actually spend your light in order to do the charges past whatever you get for free. So you basically get this per activation. So you spend the 2 hit dice, you spend the bonus action, you have it active. You can now use a Mangekyō art up to 2 times, up to 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. But past that, you can still use it. It will just permanently subtract from that 100 light pool. To be clear, I do mean permanent. In this case, whenever your light goes down from 100 to 95 to 90 to whatever, you don't get that back. The light in your Mangekyō Sharingan is a resource that is finite, and that is simply it. And it talks about here, if you drop to 0 or spend more light than the amount you have remaining, you will be permanently blinded and cannot have that condition removed by any means. So understand what you're doing when you start to get that light lower and lower and lower. Now, as for your Mangekyō arts, just like most other class mods, you're going to get access to these different abilities that are going to allow you to do different fun things. With the Mangekyō arts, it's important to know that you get to pick your Mangekyō type, which is going to help you decide what kind of Mangekyō Sharingan you have. You can go with the Evoker type, which, as you can read through, is your ninja-centric variations. So if your character is really revolved around having powerful ninjutsu, big explosions, fireballs, stuff like that, Evoker is going to be for you. There's then the Chimeric type, which again you can read through, but basically it's going to give you really powerful genjutsu, and it's going to amp your genjutsu in different ways. It's going to allow you to do a bunch of ranks of different effects and different, you know, conditions and things like that. And then finally there's the Kinetic type, which is basically if you're a taijutsu or bukijutsu specialist and you're kind of more combat with things other than your Sharingan and other than jutsus and more of a weapon centric, or, you know, again, taijutsu, so maybe more just, you know, throwing them hands out. that's the route you want to take. And all of these you can read through. They're going to give different bonuses like pluses to attack. As we said, we can jutsu different ranks of conditions. And it's even going to talk about like different special reactions and stuff that you can get, or things with when allied creatures do stuff and stuff like that. So definitely read through. This is something I would let your player decide. I mean, if you give them the Mangekyō Sharingan, you don't want to give them the chimeric type, but they use taijutsu, because then it's just going to be stupid and useless. So as a DM, I highly recommend letting your player at a minimum choose this. Up next is something I know a lot of y'all are going to be excited for, and something I think they actually made a very cool change to here, and that's going to be the Susanoo. Now, the Susanoo manifestation can be 1, the avatar version, or 2, the armor version. And basically the main difference here is the avatar version is probably the type that you're thinking of, where you get the like big body that goes around you, right? Like once it's a half body, you get this whole kind of big suit thing. I mean, it's not really a suit, but you know, eventually you're controlling this ginormous full body Susanoo thing, right? That's the avatar version. Now the armor version is really unique in that it is literally like armor plating that goes on you in the form of a Susanoo. And while they don't necessarily use it this way when it comes to the show, I think this is a really cool variation that you can use. And they show here where basically instead of being in this avatar giant body form thing that you control, you just get to wear it like armor, which I think is really unique. And maybe, you know, this will fit more with your class. Like if you're a real like good bruiser and you love to use your Buki Jutsu, whenever you do the avatar one, you kind of lose that a little bit. So this gives you a really great opportunity to be able to use what you've already created your character to do, while still having your fun Susanoo stuff. And you can read through, there's a lot of different stuff. I'm not going to go super in depth as to all of it, but you know, you can probably imagine the main differences between the two. Another choice you get to make, which is really nice because it's very unique to your person, and it allows you a little bit more kind of exciting things and gives you, a little more choice per usual, is your Susanoo weapon. And this is going to be whatever you want your Susanoo to really use and be very good at. I mean, as you can see at a base level here, you can choose your melee, your ranged, or your defensive. So if you're the tank of the team, you can go more defensive. If maybe you sit in the back and do Ninsho, or usually you're like some kind of crossbow user, you could go ranged. Or again, you know, you're some kind of like Buki Jutsu specialist, maybe melee's more your speed, all that good stuff. Now, the other thing you get is the weapon ability, which is really cool. And basically all it does is it takes whatever your weapon thing is and it adds some dope things to it. A lot of these you will see though have restrictions. So like for this one, you have to be the chimeric type. So you have to be pretty genjutsu heavy. For this one, you have to be evoker, so more ninjutsu specialist, right? Things like that. There's also some of them that are specific to what weapon you chose. So like the Cloud Gatherer, you can only take if you took the melee weapon. So I would definitely read through both the weapons and the weapon abilities, because when it comes to these two things, they're both going to intertwine pretty heavily, and you don't want to pick a weapon and then maybe like the weapon ability isn't things that you really want, or you know, maybe vice versa. Maybe there's like a weapon ability that you're like, oh, I want that one, but then it's only on the melee and you wanted the ranged weapon. So kind of try to find your good combination that you really like to have. Now, one of the other things that y'all were probably waiting for was the EMS for the Eternal Mangekyō Sharingan. Now, the Eternal Mangekyō Sharingan, I think they did a lot better in this update and this variation than they did with the old Mangekyō Sharingan. Basically, it works kind of in a similar way in that you can earn it through different ways. The main two ways they have to earn it is the canonical way in Naruto, where you have a Mangekyō Sharingan from a blood relative, whether that be a parent, sibling, or child. But the other way they have, which I really appreciate that they added this, was collecting the spiritual essence of a close friend, mentor, lover, or who recently died. And they talk about how this technically isn't canon and blah, blah, blah. But basically the idea is if someone that you love is dying, you can do this kind of sort of ritual to gain their spiritual essence. But what this means is when you do this is they cannot be revived in any way, shape, or form. That is it. You have basically taken every bit of life force that has, you know, existed within them, and it's yours now. And you can use this to create your Mangekyō Sharingan and turn it into a Eternal Mangekyō Sharingan. The main benefit of having this way is that you don't have to possibly do something evil or even just like really disruptive to one's mind, because the idea of taking the Mangekyō Sharingan off of a blood relative, even a sibling, parent, or child, no matter what the case is, the idea of doing that's really dark, and your character might be a very positive, very uplifting, very like loving character, very good person. And if the way to earn it is by, you know, sticking the eye of your blood relative into your eye to like turn it into an EMS, again, it's just very, very dark. And there's a lot of characters that just like wouldn't do that objectively, which sucks because you'd either have to A, break the roleplay of your character a little bit, or B, you would just have to never do it. And so this kind of gives you that additional other option where someone really close to you, even again, a parent, sibling, or child, can pass away, and you can, instead of taking their eye, take their spiritual essence and go that route. Now, obviously there's ways to get the eye of like them sacrificing it for you, something like Shisui did, where he gives, you know, Itachi his eye. Granted, that didn't give him an EMS, I understand that, but something similar to that line of them providing you with that Mangekyō Sharingan. Obviously that's an option, but I think it's cool nonetheless. Now, as for the EMS, what it does is basically you don't have to worry about going blind anymore. Kind of. When we talked about darkness earlier, this is where it sets in. Once you activate your EMS, you can no longer go blind due to light, but instead you have darkness. And your darkness basically takes the same exact value that the light does, but its cap is 200. So you have twice as much space to work with. And the way this one works is whenever your darkness does fill up to 200, you lose your mind, basically, and you completely go like villainous dark mode. That's it, you're done, game over, GG's, right? Like it even describes it as you basically become like an NPC, because it's to the point where like your character can't control their mind and their own thoughts anymore. But what's really nice is darkness is not permanent, okay? Because you have an EMS, obviously they don't want this to be some kind of permanent, you know, thing against you, because it's not what an EMS does. So for every downtime spent performing this ritual, which is, you know, kind of you doing all this stuff, it talks about it, you exercising it through the Uchiha clan ritual, you can get rid of 2 darkness. So rather than light being this finite resource that you can't do anything about, darkness is something that you can basically, in a sense, meditate and slowly lower that darkness level more and more to give you more space to use your Mangekyō arts and things of that nature. And here we have your Mangekyō arts, which are just your abilities or your things that your Mangekyō is going to unlock for you. Things that you see in the show, like Amaterasu, where, you know, it's that specific Mangekyō ability. That's what these are. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one. I'm going to scroll through to give you a chance to read everything if there's something you want to read. But to quickly explain how it goes, as you can see here, a lot of them have different classifications where maybe it's a Susanoo thing, maybe it's a Mangekyō thing, maybe it's both. They're going to have casting times, ranges, all of your normal stuff that a jutsu has. One thing it does have special is your alternative cost, because again, your Mangekyō Sharingan is going to have charges, and you can use these charges to do these different abilities. Once you run out of charges, you can still do them, but it's going to start costing you light. Also, when you switch to darkness, if you eventually get that EMS, you use the same exact number, the alternative cost doesn't change, it's just 6 darkness rather than 6 light. And then going through, again, it's like other things where there's different elemental releases. So you're going to have, you know, if you have fire, if you have water, whatever. And, you know, there's different feats you can take to get unique different elements. So, you know, there's always a chance to be like a really cool, unique, like water and fire Uchiha or something like that. But again, just a lot of fun things, different genjutsus that you can use. There's also some more like absolutely insane ones, as you can see, like a 20 light thing, which is just ridiculous. It's just absolutely absurd. To use a 1/5 of your light for a single Mangekyō art is crazy, but I digress. As you can see, different things, right? I mean, 10 light, there was a Buki jutsu in there, so there's a little bit for everyone. So don't think if you get the Mangekyō Sharingan and you're like a Buki jutsu user that doesn't take full advantage of your Sharingan, that doesn't mean that you're going to be just completely SOL and not able to use this to some fun extent. Now, finally, the last 2 things that I have to go over with you, I'm going to kind of put into one. That's going to be one, your Mangekyō Sharingan feats, which as you can see here, once you get your Mangekyō Sharingan, there's different feats you can do to get different things. Excuse me, to be honest, I would highly recommend getting these. Once you get the Mangekyō Sharingan, it's really, really powerful. And these only make it stronger. As you can see, I mean, like with the Adept Mangekyō, which is level 13, which is only 2 levels after the minimum requirement, while in Adept Mangekyō Sharingan, you gain 7 Mangekyō art charges, which is freaking absurd. To get 7 charges before it starts hitting into your light is just ridiculous. And as you can see, it keeps going more and more. down to the superior, where like twice per full rest you can get your Susanoo. You get a special Susanoo weapon type. Once per full rest you can spend a full turn action to enter that superior mode, and you get 9 Mangekyō art charges. So highly recommend these feats. These feats are very much ultra mega hyper powerful. If you have Mangekyō Sharingan and you're playing a high level campaign, please by all means do these. Now, not only that, but at the very end of it, we have a very cool thing that you can do here, which is basically adversaries. And this is how you make a enemy that has a Mangekyō Sharingan and how to treat it. So you can see kind of what level of Mangekyō Sharingan does this enemy have. And not only with that, but then there is a art save in DC when it comes to the actual enemies and what they have. And then the different kind of abilities and stuff you can give them. So there you have it. That's your Mangekyō Sharingan updated class mod thing. Now, obviously, not everybody's going to be happy with every single change here, and if you aren't, that's fine, actually. King even talked about recently how he's going to try to add something in to where it's kind of a variation between the two, because there were some things that were in the old Mangekyō Sharingan that a lot of people liked that aren't here anymore, so he's going to have this kind of alternate way of playing it that is more similar to the previous class mod rather than this one. Personally, I think this class mod is a huge step in the right direction, just like everything King has been doing. It just simplifies the class, makes it a lot easier to understand, easier to use, and just more fun. Because while, yes, some players want that overcomplicated resource management of having 50 things to pay attention to, no matter how good you are at D&D, at Naruto 5e, and no matter how good you are at managing those things, it still slows the game down, and it can still be a bit of a nuisance for the player, and not only the player, but especially the GM, because it just gives them more and more things that they have to focus on and worry about really fine-tuning and making sure work properly. Whereas this, it just makes it so much easier on everyone involved. So hey, that's my opinion. If you disagree, let me know down in the comments. Maybe you liked the old Mangekyō Sharingan better. And hey, you know, if you want to talk about it, let's talk about it. And don't forget to subscribe if you like the content. Nonetheless, I will see you all on the next one. Peace out, everybody.